So Tommy Fury defeats Jake Paul on an 8-round split decision, handing him his first professional defeat. Let's talk about it. From the opening bell, it was clear to see Tommy Fury was the better boxer of the two. Better balance, better coordination, more accurate, more fluid, and just more together all round. Jake Paul had a desperate look about him right away, almost as if he knew he wouldn't be able to box with Tommy Fury and he had to go for the knockout. And that's what he did from the first round all the way to the 8th, was go for the knockout. Tommy Fury in the early rounds was trying to come forward a little bit and put some pressure on Jake Paul, but I think Paul proved that he was the physically stronger of the two, if nothing else. So Fury then accepted the role as being the matador and Jake Paul coming forward as the bull. Fury was controlling things with his jab and his movement. He was definitely the ring general as far as I'm concerned. Tommy Fury was using his longer arms effectively. Somebody did tell me that according to the tale of the tape, Jake Paul was listed as having a longer reach. Well, reach and arm length are two different measurements. I've explained this many, many times on my channel. You can have a longer reach than somebody, but have shorter arms. And Tommy Fury, to me, clearly had the longer arms of the two. Anyway, Jake Paul did have some success with a jab here and there, rocking Tommy Fury's head back. And of course, later on in the fight, in the final round, he scored a knockdown with a jab. And he also had some early success with his left hook. But unless Tommy Fury's got an iron jaw, and obviously I spoke pre-fight about Tommy Fury's chin, I said that's a question mark. We don't know whether he can take a shot. Unless he has an iron jaw, there doesn't appear to be that much mustard on the Jake Paul left hook, because he caught Tommy Fury flush on the chin with it several times and Fury barely blinked. Now the right hand is Jake Paul's honey punch. That's the shot that he's knocked out previous opponents with. He didn't, to my recollection, land it totally flush on Tommy Fury. Yeah, it landed, but Fury was kind of pulling away, or the punch wasn't delivered at the right distance for maximum power. And that's, of course, testament to Tommy Fury's reflexes, that he's able to ride punches like that. But it's also testament to how sloppily that right hand was delivered by Jake Paul throughout the fight, because he was swinging it really wide. He would put his head down and swing this right hand over the top, which Tommy Fury could anticipate a mile off, because he was really telegraphing it, Jake Paul. It was shades of Deontay Wilder at times. You know how Wilder sometimes really telegraphs his right hand? He kind of cocks it back before he throws it. That's what Jake Paul was doing here with his right hand in this fight. Tommy Fury showed the better punch variety. The jab was there, the right hand, and his right hand, of course, much straighter than Jake Paul's. He was throwing it straight as an arrow down the pipe. And the class of Tommy Fury definitely told here, which is something I said or alluded to in my prediction video. I said that, to me, Tommy Fury is the more talented of the two, faster, better coordinated, better combination puncher and all this kind of thing. And that's how it played out in the fight. He was definitely the more talented, the better schooled. But Jake Paul, as I say, probably did show that he was the physically stronger of the two. There was a couple of point deductions in the fight. I thought the referee was overly fussy. I didn't think either of those point deductions needed to happen. As far as Tommy Fury's power, because, I spoke about the fact that Jake Paul wasn't able to put a dent in Fury with the left hook. I think it was really Fury's speed that was bothering Jake Paul. I don't think Fury's power bothered him at all. He landed some clean ones, uppercuts, right hands, walked Jake Paul onto shots. And while Jake Paul did seem a little flustered, maybe slightly buzzed after getting hit with several consecutive shots, I don't remember any one shot seeming to bother him that much. So I guess you could say the jury's still out on Tommy Fury's power. Maybe he isn't a particularly hard puncher. I'm not saying he's feather-fisted, but he kept on talking pre-fight about how he's a real boxer and Jake Paul is just a YouTuber, an entertainer, an influencer, a guy who only picked up boxing a few years ago. So if you're a serious puncher as a real boxer, then shouldn't you be putting a dent in Jake Paul, like a serious dent? Tommy Fury was unable to do that. And it's not the end of the world. Just because you aren't a massive puncher doesn't mean you can't become very successful in the sport. I mean, Andre Ward wasn't a massive puncher. Again, I'm not comparing Tommy Fury to Andre Ward here. I'm just pointing out that some of the greatest fighters of all time have not been big punchers. As the fight progressed, it became more and more entertaining. Both guys were landing more. And this is why I was always interested in this fight from the very beginning, because when you get two young guys with a chip on their shoulder who have a lot to prove, more often than not, they're going to go for it. And especially when one or both of the fighters is a bit green, is a bit raw, bit novice-y. More mistakes happen in those kind of fights. And when you combine that with the young energy that both guys have, the chip on their shoulder, big shots are going to land in matchups like that more often than not. And big shots did land here. It didn't result in a knockout, but we did at least get a knockdown in the final round where Jake Paul landed a left jab which dropped Tommy Fury. A flash knockdown, Fury kind of slipped on the canvas, but it was a legitimate knockdown. If somebody hits you and it causes you to slip, it's still a knockdown. It might not have hurt you. Maybe if you'd had more solid footing, you wouldn't have gone down, but it is what it is. So Jake Paul scored the knockdown, but ultimately it wasn't enough. It went to the scorecards and Tommy Fury got it on a split decision. I thought it was a fun, entertaining fight, and there was an even more fun, entertaining fight on the undercard, or was it Chief Support, between Ilunga Makabu and Badu Jack. I didn't actually catch the whole thing. I only caught, I want to say, the second half of the fight. So when I've seen the whole thing, I'll do my post-fight review on that as well. But yeah, the Jake Paul-Tommy Fury fight was highly entertaining. I thought the crowd enjoyed it. I'm sure many of you enjoyed it, even those of you who were ridiculing the fight. There is entertainment to be had at all levels in boxing. It doesn't always have to be the top-tier elite fighters. In fact, very often the top-tier elite fighters, when they face each other, it turns out to be a dud because they're so highly skilled, they're so cagey, and they've got such a calm head on their shoulders a lot of the time that both guys are able to get through the fight without taking any serious shots. You see, so sometimes you have to come down a few levels, not just in terms of ability and skill, but also mental maturity. You have to come down a little bit in order to get the most entertaining fights. And I'm not saying this fight was Hagler Hearns, but for what it was, a pair of novices, I thought it was good fun. So that's my take on it. Give me your take in the comment section below. Did the fight go as you expected? I want to say most people seem to be picking Jake Paul. And by the way, I did see that whole piece of paper, document, whatever you want to call it, that was flying around before the fight, claiming that it was going to be fixed. Maybe I'll make a separate video on that. But yeah, I picked Tommy Fury to win the fight on points. That's the result we got. Jake Paul says he wants the rematch, and why not? It's a load of money. He has a rematch clause in the contract. Maybe he'll be a bit more calm second time around because he seemed a bit anxious, Jake Paul. Tommy Fury seemed like the more relaxed of the two. And anxiousness does different things to different people. For some fighters, they freeze when they're anxious. Other fighters, they get very sloppy. And it was the latter with Jake Paul. He was very sloppy. His punches were rushed a lot of the time. His timing was off. But again, that's not just down to the anxiousness. That's also down to the fact that he was in there with someone who is a better boxer than he's fought before. I mean, Anderson Silva could box, but the guy's pushing 50. Tommy Fury's got that youth, the legs, the reflexes, the hand speed, etc., as well as better boxing skills than Jake Paul's used to. And yeah, the point I wanted to make actually was Jake Paul seemed to be the favorite in most people's eyes. Most people seem to be picking him. I think he was a favorite with the bookmakers. And of course, most Americans were picking him to win. Teddy Atlas basically gave Tommy Fury no chance at all. And I do watch Teddy Atlas's podcast from time to time, but his anti-UK bias is quite jarring at times. You know, I'm not someone that's super patriotic or anything like that. But when I see someone displaying such obvious and blatant bias, it's like, give it a rest, bruv. Do you know what I mean? He always wants to think the worst of British fighters on every occasion, Teddy Atlas. And then, of course, he starts mocking British people all the time. You can't help doing that, talking about tea and crumpets and all this kind of stuff. It's like, how many times are you going to repeat the same joke over and over again? So, be interesting to hear what Teddy Atlas has to say, actually, about this fight, because he thought that Jake Paul couldn't lose virtually, from what I remember him saying, which I always found curious because, as I say, to me, Tommy Fury is the more talented of the two. That's what I said in my prediction video. He's the more talented of the two. So why would you be so absolutely certain that Jake Paul, who's just a novice like Tommy Fury, was going to come in and dominate or something? I don't get it. To me, this was always going to be a competitive fight. Question marks over Jake Paul, question marks over Tommy Fury, two young guys, not a lot of amateur experience. It was always going to be competitive in my mind, but I just felt as though Tommy Fury, with the extra athleticism, better technique, will probably get the job done on points, and that's what happened. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.